I made this cosplay. This is my NENE KUSANAGI cosplay from Cosplay. I finished it in January this year, and I'd say that still to this day it's the best cosplay I've ever made. I started it in August last year, and I finished it in January this year, and then wore it to NENEKUSANAGI. And now I'm going to explain to you how I made it. The first part I made was this green waistcoat thing. This is what it looks like. And it does up with poppers. So I patterned it myself. What I did was I drew out the shape which I felt it would be, and I kind of did that based on a previous bodice pattern I'd made for my NENE Yashiro cosplay. And obviously the pattern which I drew kind of myself wasn't perfect the first time, so I made 2 mock-ups and then I'd adjusted the pattern to what I needed it to be. So I sewed the pattern together. I actually used all French seams, so you can see there's no like raw edges in there. So the first part I sewed was the darts here, which meant that it was more fitted to my body. And then I did the same for the back, though you can't see it because I've lined it here. And then I sewed the sides and the shoulders together. So like I mentioned, the inside is yellow, so I guess you could say it's lined, but it's not fully lined because I didn't have enough yellow fabric. So if I was making it again, I'd probably buy enough yellow fabric so I could line it all, because I've got this like mystery pocket here now. But I guess if I ever want to store anything, I can. So I made the yellow fabric the same shape as the green fabric here, and I just sewed it on top. However, if you look in the reference, she's got like a string of green inside the yellow here. So what I did was I just folded over the green, but obviously as it's a curve, it's very hard to get a nice fold, and because I was kind of a beginner sewer, my fold looks actually really horrible. Like, look at that. That is not nice. So what I would do, and what I recommend you to do if you are making an NENE cosplay, is to instead use bias tape, which you can either buy or you can make yourself. I found like a TikTok tutorial, I've done it more recently. And it's on the bias so it stretches better, so I don't think you'd have the same kind of wrinkly outcome, so it would look a lot neater. So you could finish that off with bias tape instead. Now that I had this waistcoat kind of together, I added ribbon on here to make the yellow strips that's on the reference picture. And so I just folded the ribbon over, pinned it, and then I just sewed down both sides. The ribbon I used was a really cheap one off AliExpress, which means it did start fraying quite a bit, so I had to be very careful where I sewed, because if I sewed off the very edge, it would leave some horrible marks. So maybe invest in some slightly better quality ribbon. And I also did the ribbon all the way down the back here. And I also did ribbon here. I think I actually added the ribbon before I added the yellow bit in, because you can't see the ribbon on the other side. For these fluffy cuffs here, I used an old cardigan that like I wasn't going to wear anymore. And I used a stitch in the ditch method so that it looked very neat at the top, which is basically when you pin like the good sides together and then you sew very close to the edge, so where you want this edge to be, and then you sew along there and then you flip it over and then you sew underneath. So there is a stitching line just here, just above where my white fluff is, but obviously with the fluff you can't really see it, so the fluff just looks really neat on there. These pom-poms here, I got them off AliExpress. They came in a pack of 4. I only used 2 of them. I used 2 of them. They were pretty affordable and they are actually really soft and lovely, so I guess I would recommend. and I just hand sewed them on to the end here, and they're pretty secure. I was worried about them falling off at con, but they didn't, which is great. They are, however, slightly annoying as they're kind of hard in the middle, and I ended up sitting on them a lot at con, which was kind of uncomfortable. Aww. I added this little crisscross shape of ribbon on the side here as per the reference, and I pinned this in as I was wearing the skirt and the petticoat and everything, so it does fit perfectly over it. But again, this was just really cheap ribbon, so it is kind of fraying quite horribly if you look on this side here. There, like, it does not look very nice, so I would recommend using a higher quality ribbon again. So as I mentioned, the cosplay closes with poppers here, and then what I did to get these smiley face shapes is I drew them on 2mm EVA foam, which I got off AliExpress, and then I painted them and I drew the face on them, and then I just hot glued them right on top of the popper there. And there we are, all 5 of them. I think this does definitely level up the cosplay because due to the con crunch, I didn't actually have these on when I wore them to con, and looking back at the pictures where it was just the tiny poppers, it doesn't look great. So this definitely looks a lot better. And I think poppers are really good because it's really easy to take the cosplay on. Here I've got this little white bit, which was on the reference picture as well. And how I did it was I cut out 2 triangles of white fabric, and then I sewed them on top of each other and then flipped it inside out, so we've got like a very nice edge there. And then I just pinned that on as I was wearing it, so I knew the exact positioning I wanted, and then I sewed it right on. But unfortunately the white fabric is quite thin, so you can kind of see where my seam allowance is in there. So maybe I should have trimmed that down a little bit. Finally, along the back here, I have poppers, which connects to this little yellow thing that has the bow connected to it. This means that the bow is removable, so that I could put this in the washing machine. It's easier to wash and easier to store. So this bow here, I made it out of pink satin, and then I layered it with some pink iridescent tulle, so you see it's got some shine there. I didn't layer it very well, so it doesn't really lay flat. I've got this horrible kind of scrunching at the top and stuff. So although it does give a really nice effect, I'd probably be a little bit neater with it next time. So I've got just like an end here. I did use fusible interfacing, which I thought would help keep the bow up, but in reality it didn't, and that's what the bow looks like, which isn't great. So I probably would recommend putting a wire kind of structure in here so that the bow does hold this kind of shape. And same with the edges, to be honest, sometimes, because they do kind of flip a bit out of place sometimes, but it's okay. The bow, I've sewed it right to this yellow thing, which is on the reference picture. So it means it doesn't fall off, and these poppers here are really secure at keeping it on the green thing here. I have 5 of them, so it goes all around the body. So you can see it sticks on here quite well, but the bow is drooping, so it really needs some support to keep it in that kind of shape. For these big button kind of things, I cut a circle out of the same 2mm EVA foam. I did engrave a little second circle there because that's what's on the reference. I think I probably should have painted that circle as well because it's really hard to see. And then I used some thick black embroidery thread to sew that X shape on top of it. I should have finished it off better because there's some horrible fraying here. I think it was finished off and then it came undone. As well, the paint is really coming off when I started sewing that in, which isn't great. And there's the other one. The cross shape isn't as good on this one either. So I probably should have marked out my cross before I put it on. So here's the underskirt, which I made out of white polycotton fabric. It's got here an elasticated waistband, which means it's really easy to put on and take off, and I find it's really comfortable. And then I've got here ruffles, and underneath I'm just wearing a cheap petticoat off AliExpress. And I've got here 3 rows of ruffles. Ruffles take up a lot of fabric, more than I expected, because I think you typically go for around 3 times the length of your kind of circumference, and I did not calculate enough fabric for this. So you can see some of my ruffles are looking a little bit flat as I didn't have enough fabric to make it very roughly all the way around. So the way I did it is I cut a long strip of fabric for the ruffle here. I sewed the top together, and then I ran a zigzag stitch along it on the longest stitch length, longest width, and lowest tension. And then what I did is I pulled the back thread to kind of scrunch up, and this meant that I could scrunch it to how gathered I wanted it in certain areas. So I made it more gathered towards the front and then less towards the back, as I thought people wouldn't really be seeing that as much. And then I just sewed it on to the edge of the skirt upside down, folded it over, and then ironed it down, which meant that it did stay down as I had an issue with that. However, now they are quite flat, so I feel like it could do some perking up. For the inside stitch here, I did a French seam, and the skirt overall, the base for it is a half circle skirt, but I gathered it, so it really fills out above the petticoat. However, I feel like it could have been maybe a quarter circle skirt or more gathered, as I feel like it is kind of weighing down the petticoat a little bit, so like the cosplay could be more full, but again I had kind of restricted amount of fabric. So I've got here the yellow skirt, and then here's the skirt with the underskirt. I don't really like the way the skirt folds go, because I feel like I haven't pleated it enough because I was kind of very low on fabric. So the pleats don't actually go very deep. I feel like if the pleats went all the way halfway and all the way back here and stuff, it would give a much nicer finish, because here it's practically flat, which I don't really like. I'd like it to be more pleated like that. The skirt has a zip in the back so I can take it on and off. The zip, I tried to get the fabric to cover it, which if I hold it down in the right place it works, but obviously as I'm wearing it and stuff it will flip open, and so it makes the zip really visible as it doesn't really match the colour of the skirt. I think maybe I should have used an invisible zipper to get a much nicer finish. The skirt is made up of 13 panels, so I've got one large one in the middle. I've got 2 light ones here, 2 dark ones here, then on the back 2 light, 2 dark, 2 light, and then here's 2 smaller dark ones, so it kind of just makes one big panel. I really struggled with the amount of panels to use because all the reference pictures were different, but I feel like this amount looks quite nice, and I didn't want to have too much because that meant extra sewing, seeing as I had to sew all of these panels to each other. I think the way I did it is very messy, so I'd work on that a little bit and work on having kind of the raw edges more hidden. I double hemmed it here. I pleated the panels as I sewed them together, and the panels are all different lengths as I kind of did lots of maths to like get it to fit my waist, and using the limited amount of fabric I had, but I can't actually remember the exact length. I gotta say, be careful whilst you're cutting, because be careful whilst you're cutting fabric, because I ended up doing an incorrect cut over here which I had to sew up, but luckily it's kind of within the pleat so it's not very visible. The fabric I use is the same fabric as the waistcoat part. I'm not really sure what kind of fabric it is, to be honest. It's definitely something synthetic, if that helps. Now onto the little collar and bow part. This is how it looks in the back. Really struggled to find a reference for the back shape, and I did find one eventually, but to be honest, it doesn't really matter because the hair's going to cover anyway, the wig. So also I feel like I did make it a bit smaller than what the reference showed because I was again kind of limited on my amount of fabric. For the collar, I have like the front side shapes here, and then I've got the big back shape and then another front side shape. And what I did for each of these is I cut out 2 of the shape, I sewed them on top of each other and then turned it inside out. So that made sure I had like a nice finish here. And it gave it a bit more thickness as the fabric is quite thin and see-through. It's a cotton poplin. It really needs ironing, sorry about that. The actual collar part, I used fusible interfacing to make it a bit thicker. I did the same thing again, having 2 layers, so you can see that there. And I made the edge here have like a little sticking out. Same with this edge over here, which meant I could use popper to hold it together. This bow is connected on with just a safety pin here. Same as the other bow, I used pink satin and then put iridescent tulle over it. And then I used a lighter pink ribbon to do the marks that are on the reference. However, I think maybe I should have just used fabric paint and paint it on instead because you can't really see the ribbon because there's not much contrast, they're a similar colour. And as well with the ribbon, I couldn't really achieve the detail that the reference had. And I think I made the height of the bow a little bit too thick because the reference, it's a lot thinner. However, as it's smaller and I use fusible interfacing, it does actually hold its shape, which is nice. I've got the leg warmers here. What I did is I sewed just kind of a rectangle fabric together in the middle. I used a French seam here, and then I also used a rolled hem at the bottom of it. At the top, similar to the cuffs on the waistcoat, I used like the stitch and the ditch kind of method to get the fluff on from the same old cardigan. What I did is I sewed the fluff on first before I sewed the whole long rectangle together. So you can see that's all one stitch along there. Inside, I've got elastic, which means that I can get it on over my heel, but it also stays on my leg, so it doesn't really fall down. I made a little bow out of black ribbon and hand stitched it on. But I feel like I maybe should have also stitched on the edges as well, or found some type of way to keep it down, as it does fly up and hardly looks like a bow most of the time. Finally, I've got the hairband. So I got just a cheap plastic, kind of cream coloured hairband off AliExpress, and then using the same fabric as the waistcoat, I used hot glue to layer it on top and just fold it over. It does look quite messy, to be honest. And as well, even if you look at the top, you can see my kind of hot glue zigzag from where I stuck it on, and it started to cool quicker than I could get the fabric on. So maybe I'd recommend something more like super glue, where you could easily spread it along so you'd have a more even surface and not these horrible zigzags. I used the same EVA foam as I did for everything else on these. I cut out 2 of this kind of butterfly-like shape, and then I painted it with just green poster paint I had lying around. I also put some green sparkly paint on top. I'm not sure how well that's picking up. There we are. Just to give it some life, some sparkle. And then I mixed some acrylic paints together to get this kind of purpley colour. I drew an outline on top, and I also did it in the insides. And then this is also just hot glued on there. It does also look quite messy again. Cosplay reveal. Here we are in the finished cosplay. Here it is. I've got the leg warmers on here as well, but I can't really fit in my whole body. Here we are. The wig is kind of really tangled, so we don't really talk about that. We've got our buttons, our bows. So here's the finished cosplay with my wig and my makeup. I didn't spend very long on the makeup because, you know, I don't usually get into cosplay in the middle of the day. But I could always do a makeup tutorial. Time for an outro, I guess. So like I mentioned, this cosplay took me, I think it's 5 months. It was from August through to January. And that included the time for patterning and everything. But I wasn't working on it consistently this whole time. It was kind of on and off, and obviously I was on like holiday and stuff in between. So I'm pretty proud. I feel like if I made it again, I could definitely do it a lot quicker, but there is still a lot of parts. So there's a lot of thinking doing the patterning and stuff, because it was my first time making something so like big and so many like complex, so many parts like this. It was really a challenge. I actually struggled quite a bit, but I'm really proud of it. I'm really happy. So I hope you like it too, because I do, and if you don't, I don't care, because I do. So like I said, this is my cosplay that I'm most proud of that I've made so far, because I started cosmaking about a 1.5 years ago, maybe. It was April 2023, so whatever the maths is. And I'm really proud of just how far I've come. And I'm hoping to make bigger, better cosplays and keep improving. But for now, I'm really happy with this one, and I feel like this is also the favourite of like people who follow me on Instagram and TikTok. And I feel like it's just kind of iconic. So like, it's probably my favourite as well, to be honest. So I'd like to wear her to a con again, probably, because last time I wore her, she wasnwasn't like probably done. I shouldn't have the headband or anything. So it would be nice to wear her again, because I think she is really cute. I really love Project Sekai. I love NENE. She's so cute. Ooh, Project Sekai fans, you want to subscribe so bad. Also, you should follow my Instagram, because on my Instagram, first of all, I have a highlight which shows like progress pictures of throughout me making the cosplay. You can even see like the dates. You can see how long things actually took me. You can see the pattern there, and then just lots of work in progress pictures. And I have a reel, TikTok, whatever, a process video. I also uploaded it here to YouTube Shorts, so you should watch that because I think it's pretty cool. And it shows kind of like all the little pieces being made. And also on my Instagram, you get to see cute polished pictures of me wearing the cosplay and all my other cosplays that I made myself. And then I also have lots of other highlights for all the other cosplays I've made. And I'll be posting obviously pictures of the cosplays that I'm making. So at the moment, I'm making Firefly from Honkai Star. I've like just started, but like expect to see pictures of that on my story. So go follow me, you want to follow me so bad. And follow my TikTok whilst you're at it too. They're both username sarili.cos. It's SARII.cos on Instagram and TikTok. First time doing a video kind of like this, so if you'd like any more, let me know, because I've got a few other cosplays that I could do it with, and especially like my even older ones, like my NENE cosplay. There's a lot of improvements that could be made there, so I could explain that this week. Thank you so much for watching. You should totally like, subscribe, turn on notifications, please. Thank you. Love you. Bye bye.